Right, there you have it. Matters BBI are focused this morning here on a KTN News Center for the next 2 hours as we bring you up to date with what is happening not only in the 47 counties but also at the bomas of Kenya. That is where our focus is this morning. We have our reporter Chris Thairu, Duncan Haimbe and also Murimi Mwangi just to give us an in-depth discussion about the BBI report. Later on we shall be engaging our political analysts here in the studio just to also tell us their view on the BBI report that was released yesterday to the top leaders of the country. But first, let's have a discussion with our senior political affairs reporter, Chris Thairu, who's located at the bomas of Kenya. Chris Thairu, this is such a defining moment for the country. President Uhuru Kenyatta, Deputy President, and Honorable Raila Odinga, ODM party leader, received the report. What do we expect to happen at the bomas of Kenya today?
Well, very good morning to you, Brenda, back in studio. It is a big day for this country, and it is a second big day. Remember that after yesterday's ceremony at State House, Nairobi, where President Uhuru Kenyatta, together with the opposition chief Raila Odinga, received that report from the 14-member team. That's the BBI task force team. And today it is the time for, or it is the turn for the public to receive these reports. And currently, members of the public are still finding their way at the bomas of Kenya. What is happening here? Security is tight, and when people enter here, they are handed over a free copy of the BBI report. Already it's out, and Standard had the privilege of getting this pull out. Of course, this is the whole report that Kenyans are being handed over when they enter here. And the process of entering is a little bit tight because of the screening. Remember, this is a presidential function. So the process is if out of the 47 counties, all the 47 counties, 100 delegates have been invited from each of the 47 counties. And so we expect around, that's 4,700 Kenyans or the public, minus their leaders, whom we understand that they are already inside the auditorium waiting for the arrival of President Uhuru Kenyatta. And remember that this will be the second big day of the country, and the contents of this report by the BBI already out. And I'm not alone in today's discussion. I'm with my colleague Murimi Mwangi, whom will be together here to just dissect some of these issues that were raised and agreed upon by the 14-member team. And yesterday we saw President Uhuru Kenyatta receive this report. But of interest is that we've seen a section of political leaders who are opposing this report. They've changed tune, and now they are supporting this report from their Twitter handles, even from their interviews. It seems they've seen the light. Or what is your take on this?
Well, politics is a game of perpetual change of tactics. And what happened yesterday, you would say, is a culmination of a long wait, close to 2 years since President Uhuru Kenyatta struck that cooperation deal with the ODM leader sometime in 2018, March 9th. And the fact that the report is out means that this closure to the first phase, but it is only the beginning to the second phase, which is now actualization of what has been realized through this document in terms of what has been recommended here. There is going to be robust public debates, participation, as well as likely changes, in fact, changes to the constitution to actualize some of these provisions that are contained in that report. And perhaps the best reflection back is the 2010 constitution, which you'd say was a product which you'd say was a product of a bus with very many passengers, because you had the bomas draft, you had the Kilifi draft, you had the Wako draft, and then all that was put in a document that came to be known as the harmonized draft. And that is what was presented to the Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee on Constitutional Change. a similar move could happen now, but before that actually gets to happen, there is the phase of robust public debates, and we expect a lot of discussions from stakeholders, policymakers, politicians, power brokers, remember, are key to succession poker games that precede any election. And this is a discussion that we expect to take center stage for some time, in fact, a few months before we can get consensus on what exactly will be presented to the lawmakers to now actualize what was visualized by this team, the Building Bridges Task Force.
Talking of this debate, the debate has already started and kicked off, actually, grasping some of the legal minds in the country. There are those actually who are divided, and there are those who feel that maybe the recommendations that were made in this report, maybe some of the legal or constitutional changes, they'll need a referendum. But there are those who feel that even the reintroduction of the position of the Prime Minister, who will be appointed by the president, there are those who are saying he'll just come like a leader of majority in the National Assembly. So there is no need of a referendum. Maybe from where you sit, do you think the opposition actually will be supporting this position of a prime minister who is not, who has no powers and who can be sacked by the president himself?
Well, actualization of the BBI report will not happen in a vacuum, and the legal compass upon which these parameters are to be set, you have to go back to the 2010 Constitution. And the question on the necessity or otherwise of a referendum, you have to go to Article 255, subsection 1, because there are issues that to make any changes as to what was envisioned in the 2010 Constitution, you have to go to a popular vote.
Yes.
And some of these issues are to do with the presidential term, the powers of the presidency, the issues to do with the independence of the judiciary, and also the mandate of parliament. But looking at some of these recommendations and what was contained in that report, including that brief in our standard newspaper today, you have a prime minister whose mandate is delegated from the presidency, but the president retains his powers as the head of state
yes.
and head of government.
Yes.
So in short, you've not touched the powers of the presidency
Yes.
to that extent. The terms of the president remain a maximum of two terms. 2 5-year terms. You can't renew, and perhaps after you've run, you can't also run in the coming election. You have not touched on the powers of the judiciary, but there's a potential question to come, and that's to do with and that's what legal minds argue, with the selection of the prime minister on the mandate of parliament. Remember from Article 255, subsection 1, there's a section that talks about the mandate of parliament and the role of parliament, and changing that would in a way necessitate a constitution. But depending on how they frame the selection of the prime minister, whether they're going to amend the standing orders that appoint the majority leader currently, or they're going to come up with another procedure that does not alter the mandate of parliament, is what could give closure to the question of whether this is going to necessitate a referendum. But remember, as I said, this is only the closure of the first phase. There's the second phase, which is the actualization of this report. And this is a political document, and we expect a lot of political discussions. And politicians are known to change tact at some point. So who tells you that somebody will not wake up tomorrow and demand an executive position of prime minister, where you separate the powers of the presidency, so that you have the president as the head of state and the prime minister as the head of government? It is a potential political discussion, as the robust discussions on this document commence from today.
Okay, and of course it is a big win for the opposition, because after the handshake, the country has been as if it doesn't have an opposition, but now there is an opportunity to have the leader of official opposition, who will have a shadow cabinet, and of course he'll be an ex-official member of parliament and a runners-up of the presidential election. Maybe from there, do you think that maybe this will revive the robust parliament we used to see, since there will be the return of the prime minister's question time, when we used to see the former prime minister answer questions at the floor of the house. That time there was a very robust opposition. Maybe this will be the return of that robust and of debates in the National Assembly, of which for a long time we've been lacking that debate.
Well, in the aftermath of the handshake between the president and the opposition leader, there has been a discussion about a dying watch watchdog role of Parliament, because the opposition in the House appears to be supporting the agenda of the government. And part of the discussion about this accountability has been that they do not have a strong figurehead, a national figurehead sitting in the House who can coordinate the role of the opposition in the House, because currently what you have is a sitting member who is elected as a minority leader in the House, both in the National Assembly and the Senate. But with the reintroduction of this position, and also the provision for cabinet secretaries to be ex-officio members of Parliament who can come and sit in the House and answer questions from members, could be a plus to MPs that have been asking for return of the parliamentary system, initially because in their arguments they could address issues of the constituencies with the ministers in the House, because they appear as members of Parliament and they can meet. But they also get the opportunity to ask the questions on the floor of the House, as opposed to the current bureaucratic system where you have to summon the cabinet secretary before a departmental committee of the House, which has to come up with a report, which again has to be debated in the House, voted for, and at times you have seen even members of Parliament complain that they have summoned a cabinet secretary, but the cabinet secretary does not come to the House. He or she sends a principal secretary or the chief administrative secretary, and they end up being chased away from the House. So members of Parliament could be partly smiling a lot, because it also presents an opportunity for some of them to also sit in cabinet. But what happens is now the question on the doctrine of separation of powers between the executive and the legislature is now in question under this presidential hybrid system suggested in the BBI report.
I've seen they have proposed to have a ministerial position, someone who will be a member of Parliament, will be elevated to be in a position of a minister, but he will be coordinating issues to do with the executive and the legislature. But of course, these are some of the issues and proposals that legal minds and the political players will have to deal with for the next couple of months. And of course, these are also, if at all there will be amendments, we'll have different legal minds from even outside the Parliament. But Moremi, talking of Kenyans, because this report was really meant to be for Kenyans and to benefit Kenyans. And let's talk about the wage bill. Talking to people out there, they were expecting that coming to the representation, the numbers of constituencies will be reduced from maybe 22 to 290 to the former 2010 to 210. And of course, there were those who were proposing the scrapping of the women rep positions and the slots of nominated MPs. But these slots have still remained. These are proposals that they still have. I think, as you correctly put it, this is a political agenda, and of course, political minds, of course, will be played here. And is it a loss for Kenyans? Because coming to wage bill still, even if they say the Prime Minister will be still earning the salary of an MP, the leader of official position still earning this as salary as a member of Parliament, but does it really help in reducing the wage bill in the country, which has been skyrocketing, and people have been complaining the economy is not doing very well?
Well, wage bill has largely informed the discourse on reducing the number of representative seats in Kenya today. But representation is an extremely emotive issue, and so is another process called the delimitation of boundaries. Because how do you convince constituents in your constituency that we are going to lose this constituency, and your access to, say, CDF will come from this other larger constituency, because perhaps our numbers do not meet a particular threshold after they have enjoyed that post the 2010 constitution. So it's perhaps such kind of thinking that might have informed the decision by the task force to retain the constituencies as they were. Remember, there has been also the emotive question on implementation of the not more than two-thirds gender law that has flopped several times in Parliament, because even the elected female members of Parliament appear not to support any agenda that would, in a way, appear to increase nominative seats for the disadvantaged gender. You remember when we had these discussions in Parliament, and therefore it could be perhaps from reflections on some of these underlying issues that they chose to retain the representative seats as they are. But on the wage bill, on the wage debate, Thairu, the man who drafted or who chaired the ad hoc committee that drafted the 2010 constitution, Abdi Kadir Mohammed, when I had a conversation with him about this whole question about the wage bill versus representation, he was of the opinion that we might perhaps be looking in the wrong places, because there have been questions about rationalization of the public service in terms of getting rid of ghost workers, looking at what we need in terms of reducing that, so that from the national government heading to the county governments, you have a proper balance in terms of the budget and what goes into the wage bill, because currently it takes a huge chunk of what is allocated either to the departmental or the departments of the national ministries or the county governments, and therefore it is a discussion we expect to continue. This is not the end for the BBI task force initiative.
But it is a win for women, because their seats have been retained. And of course, coming to devolution, we've seen they have proposed that if we have a governor candidate, then the running mate should be of the opposite gender. And as we know, politics, majority of the male candidates really want to be governors. And so it might be an opportunity to have more women governors and, of course, more women deputy governors. And coming to also the devolution, it is a win because they have proposed to increase to 35% of the audited revenue account. And but we know that there has been a problem of how money is being removed from the national government to the county government. And of course, not forgetting the wastage that we have seen. We've seen some of the governors being arraigned in court because of misappropriation of funds. Maybe these are some of the issues that they have even raised on it comes to corruption, that if at all you are a public service or servant, you should not participate in any business.
Well, it is a wake-up call to the institutions, the county governments, because you know this has been quite a challenging year for counties. Because if you remember, there was a major delay that almost put counties to a major funds lockdown, because there was a delay in disbursement of the shared revenue to the counties. But also on the institutions, there have been questions on the effectiveness of the oversight mandate of the Senate, which is the watchdog house on these devolved units in terms of even the capabilities, the practicabilities of the recommendations of the reports on oversight, getting actualized and getting results on the ground. But of course, with the renewed war on corruption, a few governors also getting to stand on the dock. Perhaps it's a positive direction for the country and for devolution enthusiasts.
And of course, coming to the position of the deputy governor, I've seen they have proposed that if at all vacancy arises for the position of deputy governor, for instance, what the scenario that is rocking Nairobi County, the Nairobi County Governor Mike Gideon Mbuvi Sonko has for a while now stayed without a deputy governor, and I've seen now the proposal that they're giving is that if the governor fails to appoint a deputy within 90 days, then the speaker will appoint a deputy governor and approved by the county assembly. What's your take on that?
Well, it's quite interesting because from the onset of devolution, there wasn't much in terms of focus on the position of deputy governors. In fact, most of them
even on their roles
used to complain that they do not have roles, and their bosses, who are the governors, are not assigning them any roles. But the fact that this has been ensconced in this document goes to point to the seriousness that the drafters of the 2010 Constitution had laid on the fact that there needed to be somebody to deputize the chief executive officer of the county, but also with reflections from Nairobi, because it's been quite a while that Governor Mike Mbuvi Sonko has not had a deputy, and when he has appeared before the Senate Public Accounts and Investments Committee, he has sought to justify that. But there have been questions even from elected leaders in Nairobi about the effectiveness of the Nairobi County government in terms of delivering on its mandate, and there have been thoughts that perhaps it would be necessary for a governor to have a helper to who he or she can delegate roles, as happens with the presidency, because it's the same model.
Well, these are some of the issues that we expect that will be debated in a couple of months. Remember that these are still proposals by the Building Bridges Initiative team, and that's the reason why the president has called today's meeting, so that these documents can be made public. And of course, there will be another set of a team that will go around the country collecting views views of what they feel and think about this document, which are some of the areas that should be amended and which are some of the areas that maybe should be retained. For now, we're still waiting for the arrival of President Uhuru Kenyatta. The function was supposed to start at around 10 a.m. We've spotted a couple of leaders who have already arrived. The Kotu Secretary General, Francis Atuoli, a couple of members of parliament, cabinet secretaries, and of course governors were also invited for this occasion, because they will play a major role when it comes to popularizing these reports at the grassroots level, so that the feelings and the views of Kenyans can be felt by the regime itself and the leadership that started this Building Bridges initiative. We also expect the official opposition leader, Raila Odinga, to be here, Kalonzo Musyoka, Musalia Mudavadi, the ANC party leader. And Muremi, just to catch your mind there, maybe there are those who were feeling that, or asking me, why now include Musalia Mudavadi, Kalonzo Musyoka, but they were not part of even the agreement from the word go. But yesterday we saw them, they were invited at State House Nairobi. What's your take on that?
Presidential protocol is a complex gamble which you cannot second guess what goes on in the presidency unless you are an insider. But of course, there were discussions around this issue, including about the invitations to State House, which were limited to parliamentary leadership, as well as the core principle to this BBI initiative is the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, as well as President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto. But of course, this forum now is open to everybody else. Stakeholders from the civil society, from the counties will be here. And of course, we also expect the in fact, three former core principals. We don't know whether NASA still exists, perhaps on paper, as has been argued by some ODM strategists about this, to also get to give their thoughts about this whole initiative. Because remember, Musalia Mudavadi has been quite a consistent voice, critical of the manner in which this task force has been handling its work. And recently, just a day before the president received the report, he issued a statement urging Kenyans to be patient, to get to read the document. I haven't seen him respond to that just yet. So perhaps he's also getting to read the document, because before he and the others get to issue their communication to the rest of the country.
Of course, from today, we expect political players to go back to the grassroots, and we'll wait to hear what they will have to tell Kenyans, either to support the report or reject the report, going by the proposals that are in this report. Brenda, we will continue giving our viewers an updated news of what's happening on the ground when President Uhuru Kenyatta arrives. Back to you, Brenda, in studio.
Right, such an in-depth discussion, Chris Thairu, that will elicit a lot of, mixed political reactions, especially when it comes to the appointment of a deputy governor within 90 days, should the governor fail to appoint his deputy. Thank you so much, Chris Thairu. Our senior political affairs reporter, Chris Thairu, and Murimi Mwangi, located at the Bomas of Kenya, just to give us an in-depth discussion about what is happening at the Bomas of Kenya. The president and Honorable Raila Odinga expected, rather than other senior political leaders. And we shall be giving you more details.